What's going on, guys? We're back with another episode of The Bird's Nest. And unfortunately, this week, it comes after an Eagles loss. The Eagles travel to Heinz Field, and they go down 29-38 to the Steelers. Carson Wentz, 20 of 35 for 258 yards and 2 touchdowns, while on the other side of the ball, you had Ben Roethlisberger, 27 of 34 for 239 yards and 3 touchdowns. Max, what happened during this game? What was the most important factor that helped the Steelers beat us?
Yeah, Tanner, definitely have to point to the defense in this one, giving up 38 points. You're not going to win too many football games giving up 38 points. Chase Claypool went off against our defensive secondary, 7 catches for 110 yards and 3 touchdowns. Reminded me of the Tyler Higbee game from week 2 against the LA Rams where he had 3 touchdowns as well. And listen, Big Ben Roethlisberger was efficient in this one, 27 to 34. He played pretty well for the most part. Not his best game of his career, but he's just a really solid quarterback throughout his whole career. He always has been. And when you're facing a team that's as complete as the Steelers, you can't afford to make too many mistakes. And unfortunately, in this one, the Eagles just made too many mistakes. Wentz 2 turnovers. I mean, you can add them to the list, man. It's been a horrible year for him from a turnover standpoint. 9 interceptions now. Still has to clean up those fumbling problems, even though he didn't have anything going wrong from that standpoint in this one. But for the most part, the defense just got torched. And the defensive line played pretty solid overall. James Conner was held intact for the most part. But that defensive secondary, Darius Slay didn't really even have his best game. So when you have your best corner that you went out and traded for and he doesn't have a good game, you're in for a long day.
Yeah, right. And right out of the gate, you expect Sanders to have a decent game because he's back where he grew up. He's in Pittsburgh, and he wants to show off for family and friends. And we saw that in the first half of the game. He had that 74-yard touchdown to the house, and then he had that goal line run in for the touchdown, 2 touchdowns, and then it was pretty much silent for the Eagles run game. We know we have Scott and Clement right behind Sanders, but Scott's only got 1 rush for 3 yards, and Clement didn't even – I don't think he touched the ball until Wentz was going down and kind of tossed it up to him real quick. But that's something that this team needs to work on going forward, this run game. And as we mentioned, Travis Fulgham, he had a good game, 10 catches, 152 yards, and a touchdown. And then next is Greg Ward with 4 catches, 26 yards. I didn't see a lot of this ball getting spread out as much as it should have been. We saw Zach Ertz only catch 1 ball. That's a problem too. What do you think is going on with that? Why did Zach Ertz only get the ball 1 time?
Yeah, Zach Ertz, his production has continued to decrease game after game. It's starting to concern me. It has been concerning me, I should say, for the past few weeks. I want him to be traded. I know it's hard because he's given everything for this city, and the GM loves him, the owner loves him, the coach loves him. I get it. The city loves him too, and rightfully so. He's done a lot. But it's time. He's getting up there in age. His production, like I said, decreasing each week. Wentz hasn't targeted him a lot recently, as much as he has in previous seasons. And I think it's time to move on. You can get a high draft pick for him and build that draft capital. Because, listen, Travis Fulgham, 10 catches, 152 yards. This guy just got pulled off of the practice squad a few weeks ago. If these guys can step up, at least one, that being Travis Fulgham, you can find production. And if you can get a pick or 2 maybe even for Zach Ertz, I'd go out and do it right now.
Yeah, what really hurt us is we mentioned we have these practice squad guys, but the lack of veterans at the wide receiver position. You don't have Alshon Jeffrey. He had an ankle injury, but now he's dealing with an illness as well. And then Deshaun Jackson, of course, did not play. We're hoping those guys get in next week or so, but it's just aggravating to see each week these guys are on the injury report and they're not in the game. We saw a few plays this game that if Deshaun Jackson was in that game, I think he could have ran down that ball and scored for, I think it was a pass to maybe Hightower that was just out of reach from his fingertips. And that could have been a game changer. And it's just unfortunate, these injuries too. We mentioned Darius Slay. Once again, every game he seems to be getting injured. And Johnson, he came into this game. I wasn't expecting him. I was surprised to see that he was playing this game because he had that ankle injury they said he was going to play through, but he was carted to the locker room.
Yeah.
So that's a big problem going forward. Now, what did you really like from this team? I personally was impressed by the way Carson was playing, although the score obviously didn't benefit us at the end. But I liked seeing what he was doing in this game more than our win against the 49ers. What did you see?
Yeah, Carson didn't have a horrible game. 20 to 35, as you mentioned in the open. He did get sacked 5 times, not his fault. For the most part, offensive line, stood their ground against arguably the best defensive line in football in Pittsburgh. But again, 2 interceptions. He had one horrible throw that got picked off early on in the game. But that deep ball at the end where he threw a Hail Mary on the last, his last pass of the game, there's nothing you can do there. He's just trying to make a play happen. But he didn't have a horrible game. I'm not going to say that. Definitely looked better than he did in San Francisco in a win last week. The offense wasn't the problem this one. They put up 29 points against a really good Pittsburgh team on the road. I think the offense overall, with the talent they have, they played pretty solid. Now, you mentioned Alshon Jeffrey and Deshaun Jackson. If you get those guys back, is there going to be an uptick in production? Maybe. We'll see. These guys are old. These guys are banged up. They're hurt a lot. They don't see the field a ton. They're not on the field every snap like you see with these other teams. But we'll see if they help Carson get more comfortable, moving forward. I'm not so sure about that. It just goes to show you that if we had actual really good talent on this offense, as far as weapons go, Jalen Rager's obviously hurt right now, but if we had really solid weapons, we have one to Miles Sanders. But if we had more, we could really explode and put up a ton of points. We're putting up 29 points with some names here that are really questionable. John Hightower, Richard Rodgers, just to name a few. And if you can put up 29 points with names like this, what could you do with guys like Amari Cooper or people like that? So you never know. If we can get talent like that later on in free agency or through the draft.
Yeah, wouldn't that be great to have a naming player playing for us on wide
Exactly.
receiver or any position really? Because this team all over struggling with depth, not depth, but better players.
Yeah,
And
depth of better players.
yeah, and so you mentioned how it was the defense in this game that really struggled. And I'm nervous watching this secondary. We know Darius Slay's over there, but he can't play the whole game and everywhere on the field.
Yeah.
Jalen Mills, to me, it was just awful. His performance.
Horrible game from Jalen Mills today. Horrible game.
And
And this
then,
is the first game he really stood out where I looked at him and I was like, wow, Jalen Mills is actually playing horrible football.
yeah,
He kind of blended in the first few weeks, but, I mean, geez, today he looked lost out there.
yeah, and then they put Craig James in there, and he just immediately gets run over for that play that didn't count. But
Yeah.
they got us back still anyway. So this division, awful division. It's up in the air still with this loss. We saw the Cowboys get their win in the division, which was the only win of our division today. Yesterday they faced off against the Giants. They win in a game where they lost Dak Prescott. Our prayers go out to him, obviously, because
Yeah, gruesome injury.
you don't want to see a franchise quarterback go down with such an injury as so. And then the Washington football team goes down. Alex Smith was actually put in this game, which is incredible.
Yeah, great to see.
Just going into his story and his comeback. And so the Giants are 0-5. The Washington football team 1-4, and the Cowboys are above us in first place of the division with a 2-3 record. So this is going to be a dogfight in this game. It's
Yeah,
going to
look what's
be
coming up
rough.
too, man. Look what's coming up.
Yeah,
You got another couple of tough games.
yeah. You mentioned it. Let's just go into it. We got the Ravens next week. We finally come back home, but the Baltimore Ravens are coming. Lamar Jackson is coming, and what are we going to do to stop them?
Yeah, man, the run game stands out for me. The Ravens run the football more than anybody in the football league. I mean, you have Mark Ingram, you have J.K. Dobbins, you have Lamar Jackson. It's going to be a struggle. Mark Andrews, who I think top 3, maybe even top 2, depending on what Kelsey's been doing this year as far as tight ends in the league. He can do it all, man. Pass block, red zone threat. He is everything I want Zach Ertz to be right now, which he's not. But Mark Andrews is the real deal, and you also have Hollywood Brown to stretch the field with the speed on the outside. So we'll see what happens. You have to stop the run game. You're not going to contain Lamar Jackson. He's too good of a player, but you have to slow him down as best you can. But overall, this defense for the Ravens, too, is nasty. They got a couple of hard hitters. So it's not looking good. And I'll tell you right now, if we go to 1-4-1, you can definitely bet that we're going to have to make some big-time changes, overhaul this team looking towards the future, because 1-4-1 is not going to get the job done. I don't care how bad the division is, man. We already got beat by the Washington football team, which is a game we should have won. We already tied with the Cincinnati Bengals, who got destroyed yesterday by the Baltimore Ravens. But listen, the Ravens put up 27 points in a horrible effort by Lamar Jackson, you would say. He didn't have his best game. 27-3, they beat the Cincinnati Bengals today. And I got to tell you, if they have even an off game next week, you still wouldn't be surprised if they beat the Eagles.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough game. What's the first move that this team makes after losing? Say we lose next week. What's the first move this team makes?
Yeah, it's a good question because for me, it would be fire the general manager and Howie Roseman. I don't know if Jeffrey Lurie will do that. I think they would probably point more towards the head coach and Doug Peterson first. But listen, I'm a Doug Peterson fan. I stand by him. What the talent he's working with right now is very questionable. And we saw what he can do when he has talent on both sides of the football. Even Jim Schwartz, to answer your question, Tanner, the first person that would be gone, in my opinion, would be Jim Schwartz, just especially because how bad the defense played today.
Right.
And I think it might be time for him to go. I don't think I would do that either, though. I really don't think it's his fault. I mean, the only guy – look, he has a good defensive line. The only guy in the secondary he really has to work with is Darius Slay. So look at the linebackers that he has to work with. I mean, what are you going to do?
Yeah. Right. I don't think you're going to get much argument out of anyone at this point with getting him out of here. But it's Philadelphia. You know how us fans are with wanting change now and immediately. So we will see what happens going forward. And let's hope next show we are talking about a surprising win.
Yeah, let's hope.
Yeah. All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in.
Take care.